You're listening to WeDeepen Media.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Deepen with Christina. I'm your host, Christina Weber, founder and CEO of WeDeepen, Feminine Weapon, and also a certified professional love coach and intuitive matchmaker. If you haven't lately, go check out WeDeepen.com, see all types of upcoming social and transformational experiences. Also, when you hit that link to get onto the calendar, on top, you can see there's links to some other websites. One there is for a WhatsApp group. That will put you into the main WeDeepen Network WhatsApp group. We'll send out broadcasts for all types of retreats and festivals and bigger multi-day events. And inside of that, you get access to local WeDeepen WhatsApp groups. I just today added Chicago and Miami. We have Austin and Los Angeles, where, Los Angeles is the OG group because we started that one about 3 years ago. And, with these WhatsApp groups starting, I remember there's a couple, Saget and Ilanit, when the WeDeepen WhatsApp Los Angeles group was first created. They met. They eventually fell in love, and they have embarked on this relational journey together. The two of them facilitate divine union. I just think like in these early stages, especially, it continues to popping, but you never know where you're going to meet your significant other. And if you are growth minded or growth oriented, this is the perfect place to go to, whether you're currently single or you're in relationship and you want to deepen with your significant other. On that calendar, you can see there's upcoming experiences from the biohacking conference. The 9th annual one is about to happen. So if you missed that one, the 10th annual one will be next year. And we also have a retreat coming up in Croatia. The Love Boat retreat for 15 men and 15 women who are currently single to become comrades for each other's love lives. Jet and I, who's my co-facilitator of the Playful Portal, her and I are working to launch a Trust Us retreat. And I'm also working on the Epic Love Club. You're hearing that first here. After I finish recording this podcast, I'm back into that project to get that offering up and ready, because I've been talking, our WeDeepen matchmaking database is popping, and matchmaking it's a very much an intricate offering. It's, when you're being someone's personal recruiter, it takes a lot of energy, and I want to be able to support more people. And so I'm creating this Epic Love Club that's going to have 3 tiers of memberships and 3 events per year that we'll all meet up together in person to learn, practice, study love. And then throughout the year, I'll be setting you up with each other and people that I meet out in the world. You'll be camping out in my brain. That's another why that matchmaking services are I'll say like a luxurious offering to some extent, because we're actually doing something that you might, if you're a busy entrepreneur or somebody who has like a mission elsewhere in the world, hey, it's okay to, sub out this area of your life, especially because I'm not going to just do it for you. We're going to do it together. And that's essentially what the Epic Love Club is. You'll also see that Relationship Renegades has an upcoming retreat coming in September in Costa Rica, as well as they have the Higher Love certification course. And Ken Page from Deeper Dating, I am bringing on his offerings as well. So a lot of new exciting things are happening when WeDeepen. So definitely go WeDeepen.com. And also I will say, sometimes people go to that website and they don't fully get it. I'm working on that, but we have such, the people who listen to this podcast and the people who have been surrounded by WeDeepen for so long are essentially they're percolating and they're growing with us. And sometimes I don't have that bandwidth to go back to the website. So just to note, keep listening, reach out, stay connected, join our email list, join our text message list, and I guarantee you'll be involved. If you do enjoy this podcast, please do like, subscribe, rate it, give it 5 stars. It helps me continue to record it and helps more people to find it. And again, what I love most is being with you in person. So definitely come and check out these live offerings, and let's get together and work together in real life. I have a special guest today. I'm in Austin, Texas. Indy Rishi is in Hawaii. We have been working together for the past 3 years, initially connected through Frank Donner, who is an advisor of mine at WeDeepen. And Indy and I, during COVID, launched and facilitated the Mind Sports experience. It was a monthly debate where people would come online. We'd have, 2 teams and then a live participatory audience. And we debate topics like socialism versus capitalism, polyamory versus monogamy. We did a vaccine conversation. Mask versus no mask. I mean, that was the first one, mask versus no mask. Like, we were definitely like cutting edge and a little rubbing edges at the same time. And since then, Indy, you've launched Political Hope. You're an activist, and I'm always so impressed with how you steward community and show up for civic responsibility like nobody I've ever seen ever before. And an educator for children. You just you kind of nail this like 360. I even said like early on, I was like, what do you want to talk about? And you're like, well, everything's connected. So I get it. It's all interconnected in what we do. And I see that you're injecting more love and hope into the world. I'm so grateful for everything that you do. And this is our second time recording this podcast episode. So the first time we were both in LA about 1.5 years ago, stoned. I have since quit smoking cannabis, but I was definitely towards the end of my relationship with before I broke up with cannabis. It's been about 8 months since I've smoked, which is we used to, cannabis and I miss her sometimes. We had a great relationship, but then it started to just give me so much anxiety. And I remember one of my Brian Howie podcast producer listened to that episode, and he's like, you guys are just like stoned. And it sounds like you didn't do Shark Tank, because I was debating on Shark Tank. It sounds like you didn't do Shark Tank because you wanted to smoke pot. And I was like, that's not it. Like, you're missing the point. Maybe we just missed the point in this podcast, because I'm not a pothead. I like to take like a little hit of cannabis at night so I can keep working. I was more of like, it was supporting my workaholicism was supported by smoking cannabis. And they say what actually had me stop my relationship, or like end the relationship with cannabis, was Andrew Huberman's podcast about cannabis. It reframes me. He shares about how in the beginning, when people began to smoke cannabis, they can do it to shift their anxiety, but then eventually can start creating more anxiety. And I realized for my brain, it was starting to create more anxiety for me than alleviate the anxiety.
I'm going to plead the fifth on this topic, but I will say that now that I've been working on the farm a lot more in my life and spending almost all my days on farms, I'm realizing also the value of appreciating nature in all its various forms and in medicinal qualities of nature, especially if you grow things naturally and regeneratively and kind of following the indigenous ways, and also recognizing that not just forget about cannabis, but there's so many other plants that if you drink teas from them, or you put them on your skin, or if you do all these different things, they actually are way better than pharmaceutical things you can get from Walgreens or whatever, right? Rite Aid. And they're super potent, super powerful. And also, I've noticed even with cannabis, like when you got to do some weeding or you got to go out and do some farming that just takes a lot of energy, sometimes it helps you tune in to nature. Like you do it and you're just like focused and you're like, I can't even explain it. It's so beautiful because maybe it's just me, but I've also checked it out with my colleagues who are farming with me or learning farming, right? I noticed that people are more tuned in with what they need to do. on the farm. They're not distracted by social media. They're not distracted by other things. They're really tuned in with nature when they're also absorbing nature within their body. So just throwing that out there, but I'm going to plead the fifth.
If we were still doing mind sports right now, I would propose that we did an episode, cannabis versus no cannabis.
Whoa.
Because plants are great, but like you don't want to take poison ivy and rub it all over your body.
No.
Yeah, and there's some plants out there that will make you sick.
Sure. Yeah. And also, we got to remember, like, sometimes there's a there's a fine line between a poison and a remedy, And so.
Yeah. How are you using it? I sometimes think of, with the dispensaries opening up all over the place, that there's also it's coming with not a full education about the plant. And so not a full how to use it intentionally. I remember, or
appreciation of how it grows, how it lives. It's a living organism too. Does it want to be forced into femininity, like only feminine, and there's no masculine at all? Like, wait, how does that happen with us if we're over feminized or over masculinized? And we're doing that with cannabis. Like, I don't know is that healthy? Like, for the cannabis. Same thing with mushrooms too. Look how big everybody, I'm like looking around. So many people are like selling and growing mushrooms all over the place, but I'm like, wait, what about the responsibility of it? And what about like using it for transformational purposes in your community as well? Like, not just in taking it, but like, what's the next step? What's the bridge, the integration into reality?
A few nights ago, I do sometimes miss my relationship with cannabis. It's like my ex, you think about it sometimes. And I loved at night times that I would, I'd have stuff that I need to get done. And so I'm a night owl. So I'd light my candles, play some music, and I'd take a couple hits, and then I'd go into a workflow. And now that, I have this Grounded app that I believe if I look at it, it's like I'm now 8 months and 4 days with no cannabis. And my goal was to go an entire year. And I was just like, oh my God, I would love. And sometimes when I have kava, I love drinking kava now. There's some kava bars here in Austin, Square Rut being one of them. And I didn't have any kava. And I was missing the cannabis, and I was like, I'm going to take a little mushrooms. Like, let's just see what the little mushrooms, I'll take a little mushrooms. And so I did that. And like 30 minutes later into my work, I was like, oh, wow, this is fun. But this is a different type of fun. Can I really focus in this? Do I want to go online shopping? Like what do I want to do with this? And I think, but I did notice doing a little mushrooms and working, it's not like a repeatable experience. My challenging thing with cannabis, it was hard to be like, I'm going to do cannabis tonight, but not tomorrow night, not this night. It's like, I wanted to do it. And then they say cannabis is not addiction forming, but I beg to differ because I experienced something different. Mushrooms, I think that you have to tell me, or can get addicted to mushrooms. What I have heard though recently is ketamine. Is that there's a lot, and I don't have much experience with ketamine, but I hear that there's a lot of concern in the conscious community about too much ketamine use.
And we also have to also appreciate and acknowledge that we are creatures of habit, right? Like it doesn't matter what the thing is. Like we have a neurological system that's based on feedback loops, right? And like our endocrine system is based on feedback loops. So we get addicted to people, we get addicted to things, we get addicted to circumstances, we get addicted to patterns, right? So sometimes it's not even that the cannabis is addictive. It might be just that you every night you're doing it at the same time in the same condition. And you're like, there's a level of control and it feels good that you have some control in your life when everything else is out of control, right? So we are creatures of habit, always seeking something that we can control, within the context of that thing. And sometimes, yeah.
Especially if that thing makes you feel good. You said relationships.
If it makes you feel good.
It's
totally.
The relationships. I primarily work with people around dating and love and their relationships.
Are you sure they're people? Are you sure they're people? Are they AI? Or are you sure? Are you positive?
They're live. They're humans. I work with humans. Some might be aliens or classify themselves as aliens. However, I work with people in love, and I'm navigating my own love life at the same time. And I can see that in dating, there's this desire to define, like, what is this, and to control the situation. And I personally am, and then society wants to know what it is too, and they want to protect you. I read something recently that's been supporting around like risk tolerance, and how that society will only let you go as far as they're willing to go at the same time. So if you want to rip off, like, so me and my dating experience, I've noticed that there's like people in the external world of want to protect me. We want to protect each other, because I do see a lot of heartbroken humans, and that's why
some of that you do feel that could it also be projection? Because
totally, it's projection. So like you have to be like almost like samurai with like alleviating the social conditionings and like getting true to yourself. Is that really true for me? Like, do I feel unprotected? And I'll say especially in dating, because we crave security and novelty at the same time. And we do want to control our experience, and we want to know, this is like we live in a very uncertain environment in a world. So what can we make certain?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And also sometimes we project that on other people, because maybe if we're controlling that certainty of somebody else, maybe we're hoping maybe it'll affect our certainty, because our certainty, it's funny. I'm glad you bring this into the space, because one of my favorite things about discerning between Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy, and I was a minor in philosophy in college, even though I was at pre-med and everything, I did really get into like Western philosophy. And Western philosophy is so dense, and so much language and so much repetition of like these ideas. But like a lot of these ideas are pursuing a factual, like it's trying to get to a point of an answer. And you can see this showing up in like our medicine. You can see it showing up in our science. You can see it showing up in there's one answer. Like that's what we're going towards, one answer. But in Eastern traditions, it's like, let go of knowing the answer. Like whether you're in Sikhism or Buddhism or Hindu, it's like literally Vedism. It's like over Taoism. It's like, let go. Like when you let go of needing to know whatever, like you don't need to, like, you'll be free. Like you'll be free of suffering. You'll be free of death. You'll be free of all those things that give us so much pain, unnecessary pain. You actually let go of all that when you let go of needing to know the certainty, or needing to know how to put it in the box, whatever you're putting in the box.
Yeah. Almost, you just make me think like the Epic Love Club. That should be our tagline, letting go of needing to know. Because we all, like, I've noticed, like, we all want to experience. That's why I'm calling it the Epic Love Club, because underneath of the aspects of control, what we're all aiming for is to experience epic love. Like we want to like full on. And I think that life is this journey towards love. And so how, if you feel a sense of comfort, you want that comfort to stay the same. And we want to know that it's going to be, yeah, you're right. And I would love, and I say that that's the tagline, is because, this Eastern versus Western and this desire to know, we put ourselves in communities of people who are all trying to know. So they're all trying to find. So you're not supported necessarily in the being okay in the unknown space.
In fact, we like check the boxes. I can't tell you how many, even I was at that point in my life too. Like, oh, I checked the box. I'm like making money. I'm doing this. I have a career. I have this. How come I'm not getting love? How come this person doesn't love me? I did this. I did this. I did this. How come you don't love me? You don't love me. I did, like, I've been in that pattern myself. We get in these patterns of being like, oh, I should have love because this, and this. And we're not like letting go and just being and learning how to be without knowing, Yeah,
I've seen you in those moments too. You've seen me in these moments before. I've seen you in the moments like, I've been doing this, guys. Like I'm, leading the farmers protest here in the United States, and why aren't you putting me on stage and giving more attention? Like, I know about civic responsibility more than anyone else. I'm showing up to, the committee meetings. I'm on the ground doing it. Where are you guys? Why aren't you seeing me? Like, I've seen you in it, and vice versa. Mia, I'm like, they say, do what you love and the money will come. And I'm like, what the fuck? Why isn't the money coming? And they said, do what I love. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a doozy. Well, that's why we do epic love clubs, and we dissolve and deconstruct, the whole idea and the concept. I mean, even you saying that and you acknowledging me and also acknowledging yourself, in this, like, what's going on, we have to like start to understand that we are literally all of us are living in a type of matrix, and the matrix is constructed on the opposite of actual humanistic virtues and values. Like our human virtues are not put up on a pedestal in our culture, right? And this is like pervasive everywhere. So if you're trying to be a decent human being, living virtuously, with integrity to yourself and others, you're not going to thrive in this society. Like sorry, I'm looking around. Everybody who I know who is like that is struggling, but they're happy, but they're struggling in the context of the greater picture. They're not like getting seed funding or all this stuff, right? Millions of dollars. But what I'm learning hanging out with farmers, for example, is like when you have your own food and your own water and your own energy, oh my God, you're literally free. Like you're not worried about anything, And if you operate from there, you could be an artist, you could be a healer, you could be anything you want to be, a teacher, but you're not hoping to get something from somebody else. And I think that's what we need to kind of start practicing, even coming from a place of love. Can you actually love anyone genuinely when you're needing something?
I had to make 2 points. One, first is, I had a friend come visit recently, and I was going out of town, so I gave her my bedroom, and I was like, here, take my car. And when my friend said to me, why not like rent her your car, make $20 a day, give her your car for $20 a day. And I was like, oh no. And I knew this particular friend, like she doesn't have a lot of money. So I at this moment in her life, like I've known that. So it's like, no, I'll just give her. And the other friend was like, oh, what is it about her? Seems like that she's always like struggling, like in this like money thing. Like, has she not realized her worth? And I just want to be like, shut up. Like, this is not a worth thing. Just because somebody has a moment of not having, I guess, fluidity in their monetary means does not mean that they have a worth problem.
Right.
Like, let's stop projecting that onto each other. There's just moments of time. I mean, I think the greatest commodity in life, or the greatest resource that we can have, is connection to other people and to community, because you're actually always fine. I mean, through me. And this is, I did have a request for a podcast to talk about money and the entrepreneur journey. And I've gone through my phases of sleeping on people's couches and been, $40,000 in credit card debt. And it wasn't about that, like, I didn't value myself.
Yeah.
And just like that is a projection. And that when people would project that onto me, it would create all this anxiety, because then I'd be like questioning myself. Like, is that my thing? Is that not my thing?
And on that note too, keep in mind, like somebody like Sam Bankman-Fried, whatever, like is a great example of like, here's somebody who got a lot of money, and he's just one character that's way up there. But there's so many people over the past few years who have made a lot of money taking advantage of people, right? And they made money and they're fine. They're not sleeping on couches. But like, wait, hold on. We're not like questioning that, but we're questioning the people who are on the couches. Like, so we have to like, we are like pointing the wrong fingers in the wrong directions. And at the same time, it's causing us suffering, because if we don't, at this point, the more we ignore a disease, the worse the disease gets, And so we're forgetting that actually a part of us feeling love, actually feeling real love, is being altruistic, is being in service to our community. Like you said, connection is like recognizing when somebody's in need. Oh, I have abundance. Here, I'm going to share my abundance because I can have more abundance. And we're not coming from a scarcity mindset. Scarcity mindset, I'll tell you what, some of the richest people in the world are like mentally unwell because they're in scarcity mindset all the time. Like they think people are taking their money. Like what a sad feeling to feel like everybody just wants to be your friend because they want your money. That's really sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And you also do make the really good point of, in that, that worth conversation around the people who are like the, scandals, like, and are like all the scandals around there about money. That's not the way that we should judge people. It's around their monetary wealth, of how they value themselves. Second is, there's this documentary called Keepers of the Light, and it's about a woman, and she's, like, I think like a 50-year-old woman who breaks apart from corporate America and goes and defines herself, kind of like an Eat, Pray, Love story. Okay. And there's a piece of the movie that she's in Peru and she's talking to a Peruvian man, and he's speaking about in their culture that when a woman starts being 13, that they teach her, they start teaching her unattachment. They tell her that because it's 13, it's around the time she's starting to menstruate. Totally. And they say, if you meet a man who you think may be your husband, be very gentle. Like, be very gentle with your heart and with yourself, because he is not going to grow from your shoulder. They tell him he will either die or leave you for another woman. And that's something from the start, that imagine like the pain and suffering that it would be. And it's not necessarily just, a lesson it's a lesson for women there that they start to teach, but that unattachment, I see so much in the relational realm of the suffering that's created through infidelity and cheating and disharmony with a relationship, and people withholding pieces of the self for who they are because they're conforming to fit within this box of control, to make sure the other partner is okay, to make sure they're okay. And then they're not speaking their truth authentically in every moment. Yeah. And it's the unattachment is, and that's unattachment, as you were saying, to the knowingness. Like, we don't have to know everything. Our brains, I mean, in the Kabbalah says it, we live in the 1%. The 1% is what we can see, feel, and touch, but there's a 99% of the rest of the world out there that we cannot fathom to understand.
Yeah, and actually, it's I come from the Sikh tradition, right? You can see the symbol of the Sikhism right here, the symbol of the Khalsa.
I can see it, but they can't see it.
They can't see it. It's basically a sword with two swords around it, and a unifying circle. And one of the things that I really love about my culture is that we sing songs and we come together and we sing songs. And if you translate the songs, a lot of them, right? And they're poetry basically, right? And the poetry is basically like in exaltation, like you're singing about how we can never know. And it's really cool to like come together and like in Sangat or Sangha, right? Come together in holy community and to actually sing and remember, and all of us connect and remember, we don't know, but it's okay. And we don't know, and it's okay. But we do know that we can work hard and we can remember, we can live with honor and virtues and show up in community and service, but still we don't know. And that's what the songs and the poetry are about. And it's funny, like you've seen me the past few years, like that's kind of my moral compass, is coming back to these songs of I don't knowingness, right? And that I don't knowingness allows me to be a seeker, right? Because when you acknowledge you don't know, it gives you the space to seek and to ask questions and to be curious and to be courageous in your curiosity. And that's kind of what's missing these days, is people are not courageous in the curiosity. They're curious to the point where they're satisfied for the moment. And then the courage kind of leaves the building, right? But with courage, with courageous curiosity, you can actually start asking questions, not just from the people you agree with, but you can start connecting with people you don't agree with, or you can start reaching out and connecting with people who you never thought you had a connection with, and you could build a connection with them. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's funny that Sikh, by the way, like Sikh means student, but look at this. Sikh means student. Seeker. What? Seeker. Sikh, seeker. So I wonder if that word seek actually has some etymology from Indo-European languages, right?
I would love to sing songs on a weekly basis around like no attachment and to accepting the unknown, and to be and to remind myself consistently of that, because it's definitely a practice, and sometimes you can feel alone in the practice. I'm so grateful for you in my life. Jet Evelif is also someone who's so good at playing the being in the present moment, and it's not that being in the present moment doesn't mean you don't fantasize about what's possible, and but we really don't know. What do you think about psychics?
Psychics, cool.
Because oftentimes people go to psychics because we want to, like, anytime if you show up at a psychic, you're coming because you're wanting to know something. Like you're craving to know. You're craving for a psychic to tell you something. Like, when am I going to meet him? What's this relationship? What's the purpose of this? Like you're seeking, like, what's my next job? What am I supposed to do with my life? You're seeking for someone to give you knowing.
When you say psychic, I think of do you remember Big, that movie Big? And they had that it was like a Aladdin or some sort of genie that was in like a thing. Or the Pee Wee Herman guy. Well, I mean, my feeling on psychics also comes from a lot of like from our culture, right? From like the Indian, South Asian culture. There can be the potential for people to build their own psychic abilities. And in my opinion, I feel that psychic ability, we all have it. Like we all are born with it. Some of us might have more proclivity to it, maybe ancestrally, because maybe some of our ancestors are practicing and developing those skills. Maybe it's through past lifetimes. I don't know if I believe in it or not, but maybe, who knows? And then, I don't know. And then the other side of it too is that if we're all interconnected, we're quantumly entangled, right? Even if you want to go into physics, right? If all of us are fragments of the Big Bang, we're fragments of some explosion. So we're all connected in some level, like literally from molecular level, we're connected. Then we should have access to all the information and data that exists in the universe, right? They call that the Akashic records, right? But like we're tuned into it. Like it's a part of us. Like part of me is also a part of you, like Christina, because like who knows what's going to happen in this universe, but we might all come back and start to coalesce with each other too. We all separated, might come back. I don't know how it's happening, but the point of that, why I'm saying that, is that psychically we might all be connected. But the caution I advise with psychics is that whenever you're seeking anything from someone else outside of yourself, you're also inviting the opportunity for people to take advantage of you, right? Because then it becomes a transactional experience rather than an altruistic experience, right? If somebody's benefiting from you showing up, asking questions, seeking answers, they might actually, maybe at the start, they wanted to help you. But if they're making $100 a pop every time you're coming, they might be like, wait, you should keep coming. And they're not going to like let go of you becoming free. They're going to be like, wait, you need to come back for more, and come back for more. They're not going to be like, oh, you're done. I gave you everything you need to know. Go do it. That's very rare that happens in a transactional world, you know? Like think about that. Like how many healers out there go like, oh, you're healed, go. You don't need to come back to me again.
Yeah. Yeah. I recently had an experience where a psychic gave me a reading. It was a gift. But we had an appointment and she was a little late for the appointment and missed one appointment before. So she was like, hey, because of that, I'm going to give you, I'll give you a question reading, like a written response reading. And so I asked her a question and I asked her something about my love life. And she came back and she detailed some timelines of things that would happen in my love life. And there's a piece of me that wants to rid myself from that experience, because it kind of takes, it's not
self-fulfilling prophecy too. Like, sometimes our minds, our consciousness is powerful. So what you think about, you create. What you worry about, you create.
I don't want that. I want the free will. It's almost like can take away a little bit of your free will. I get it that we go to psychics to aim to like ease some experience of, and sometimes it's a mediumship where we want to connect with somebody who's passed away.
But once again, it comes back to like, what if you train yourself and you discipline yourself to be able to be the medium, to be able to be you're going to have the most access to your truth than anyone will ever have access to your truth. Like, And
it's, and the thing about it though is, I was one of my teachers, David Guillaume from the Kabbalah Center, recently put out a video around, uncertainty and I guess destiny, like what is your true destiny? And we can have, I think that God, if we talk about God wants us to have vision for our life and put effort in, but then that can get changed. And he's like, okay, great. I love that you're putting effort in here. I'll reward the effort because karma is real. There's cause and effect, but like, this can go and all this is complete. Like it's you just don't know what's really going to happen. Put the effort in, but you don't know what's going to happen. So we got to give up the need to know.
Well, got to give it the need to know. And I'm glad you brought karma in here. By the way, Christina and all the listeners out there, karma. Say it with me. Karma. Look at karma. Dharma.
Right? Dharma. Uh-huh.
Right? You heard of Dharma, right?
Yeah.
So it's Dharma. Okay. So that's first of all, right? Actually, it's important to say these words in the right way. Just like if you say any chant or any prayer in history, right? There's actually an energy. Like if you think about it, let's talk about psychic energy. What if like all the energy of everybody repeating these words keeps a vortex going through time? So if we pronounce the words the right way, we honor the traditions the right way, we actually access that wisdom through saying it the right way. Like what if, I don't know, but what if we say things the right way, it actually allows us to access the wisdom of all the people who have been cultivating that wisdom through time? What if, right? That was a really great teacher in India taught me that when I was asking about people not saying Om properly. I was like, people don't do Om. Like you go to like yoga studios, you go to any classes, people just drop it like randomly that I don't even know where. Like there's like, all right, everybody, we're going to do 3 Oms now. And I'm like, okay, great. And then they do the Om and they don't even do it right. And I'm like, okay. So like, and I had to ask my teacher in India, I was like, wait, like what, like, is that okay? Like for people to do it? Like, how do you, like, how should I approach that? What do you feel? And she said to me, it was actually brilliant. She's like, on one side, it's the intention that matters the most, right? She said, but on the other side, she brought up this point that like this energy might be being cultivated through time. And through time, let's say time is an illusion. It's every time somebody repeats it that same way, it builds. People are just tuning into that energy psychically, and they're being able to actually not just tune into the energy, but maybe heal themselves or heal their traumas or heal their patterns by accessing this perennial vibrations, right? These vibrations that have been practiced. So Om is not Om, y'all. Okay, it's Ah, U, 3 syllables. Ah, okay. Yeah, because you say it through your, like the ah is from here, from the belly. So ah, from the belly. And the oo is from the diaphragm, right? Ah, ooh. And the is from your cranium. You're vibrating your whole cranium. So you got 3 parts, right? Right? Okay. That simple thing. So you brought up karma, right? I gotta like share on that one because karma is funny. Look at what I have right in front of me. Look at this. Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the best books ever written, best pieces of wisdom and philosophy ever written about karma, right? About karma yoga. And really, like, karma is not just cause and effect, right? It's way, way more awesome and complicated and cool and simple and all the things, right? But really, it's actually, we are in such a culture of like punishment, right? That we don't recognize that actually some things are not punishment. They can also be rewarding, right? Like, we think karma is a consequence, but actually it's not. We could be proactive with karma. So if you're choosing to do activities and actions that are proactive karma, like altruistic, like, you know how you gave that car to your friend and you donated, that's a proactive karma, right? Like, you're actually doing something proactively to build your own karma. So actually, in like Indian philosophy, if you do stuff like that, Christina, out of the goodness of your heart and your will, it might actually be preventing something bad from happening to you in the future, or to your descendants, maybe to your children or to your loved ones. We don't know. We can't see it. Like, I don't know. We can't see that big picture thing, right? But in our culture, and I'm just not just mine. I've talked to indigenous elders. They also feel the same way, that are like South American, Mesoamerican and elders are like, yeah, we believe in this too. Our culture, has it completely backwards. We're like, oh, karma is just like when you get something bad happens to you because you did something bad. No, yes, that might be true. But what about if you do great things? You share your stuff, you share your resources, you share your connections, you share. What if that also brings back good actions and good karma? So karma is more than cause and effect. It actually is a philosophical understanding of the nature of our universe, because the same thing exists in farming, right? When you're tending the land, if you put effort into the land, you actually put intentional effort into the even terrible land, like land that's been completely ravaged and raped and treated with pesticides and all this stuff, but you're intentional about it. And you take the time and energy and the sweat and the blood to actually tend that land. Guess what comes out of that land after you tend it? Vegetables, fruits, herbs, medicines, cannabis, mushrooms, right? All that good stuff that comes from actually putting effort into that land, right? It's proactive karma. So you can see the karma working in nature as well, in our relationship with nature. We're noticing that right now with the climate thing, right? Everybody's all reacting to the climate issue. But like, what if we were proactive? Like, what if we were getting the military to plant trees? What if we were getting our communities to plant trees everywhere? That would create more rain and less drought. You're in Texas. What if we were like, everybody was making it a point that every week we're going to plant native trees? That's going to create more water. Literally, the trees bring the water. So like, but we got to be proactive with the karma. We can't just be reactive with karma.
It's so interesting of how you view, like, if we go back to this experience of we're all connected and we're all one, I find myself often in, the quote unquote conscious community. And I say that in a really positive way. I have, as I'm out in the world connecting with people, sometimes I find myself in these conversations with people in their 20s and being so inspired by how they are living their life nearly like I live my life now, but so much sooner than I was before. Like, they're not drinking as much. They're really consciously relating with one another. And there's something inside of me that feels this like level of pride and this, like, I'm so proud of them. And also, I think as you were speaking, I can kind of see as like sometimes the things that we do out in the world are sending these ripple effects. I started producing events in New York City a decade ago, one through Femina Weapon, which was gathering women throughout New York City. And, we were bringing in speakers on consciousness and spirituality and producing concerts. And I married myself and, had a group of like 250 people, like inspiring these younger women to like follow their dreams and to marry their dreams. And we did something on toxins in the cosmetic industry. And then I started doing events on love and relationship. And I remember during that period, younger people would come, and to now see them out in the world and actually feel as though not that, we are, parents of each other. We're each other's students and teachers. And so the circusry effort is happening. And for me as a sometimes like I was yesterday talking to this gorgeous younger woman in her 20s, and I was so inspired by her, but I could also see there could be a different thread line of me being like, oh my God, who's this like younger, gorgeous woman? Like she's going to take all the guys and all the things. It's more of, I feel so, like we are sending those ripple effects out into the world that actually is creating that energetic that is, it's like creating a more evolved society of human beings.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. Actually, in fact, on that note, it just happens to be on the page I was reading today. I kind of treat this book once in a while, like a tarot. I just open it up to a random page. And today can I read this?
Yeah.
Too? So it's from the Bhagavad Gita, right? It's a wonderful translation. This one is one of my favorite ones because it's more poetic. It's not so patriarchal and masculine, The ignorant work for the fruit of their action. The wise must work also without desire, pointing man's feet to the path of his duty. Let the wise beware lest they bewilder the minds of the ignorant, hungry for action. Let them show by example how work is holy when the heart of the worker is fixed on the highest. So did that resonate anywhere, or that make sense anywhere? I mean, can I share my favorite part about that?
Please.
When the heart of the worker is fixed on the highest. So, so many of us, I mean, I can't tell you how many you brought up young people, right? Young adults. I've been learning more and more recently, like, because they're coming to me. Like, I'm not an elder, but they're starting to like ask me.
You are an elder to them. I am an elder to them. We're in our 40s.
They're like, we don't have purpose. They're like, how do we volunteer? How do we show up? We don't some of them have substance abuse issues, right? And they're like beautiful people, like beautiful human beings, but they have substance abuse issues. And when I'm like, what's going on? Like, why? They're like, well, we do work, but like, we don't feel good. Like, we don't feel connected to purpose, and we don't know how to get to purpose. And so many people are like doing stuff. They're making money. They're doing what their parents want them to do, or they have trust funds and they like can live comfortably, but they don't know. They're like, or they've made money in the past. They could be in their 50s and 60s too, right? They've made a lot of money, but they're just doing ayahuasca retreat after ayahuasca retreat. And it's like, I can't figure out my purpose. But right here, just in this, like literally this thing, it says that when your work, what you do is connected to something much greater than yourself. When you can like actually remove this ego from what you're doing and actually be like, put it in the context of the greater self, all of a sudden you transcend that ignorance, right? You transcend that ignorance, and actually you start to connect to something that might actually help you be superhuman, right? Like everybody's interested in being superhuman. Well, maybe that superhumanness comes from that courageous sacrifice of living in your authenticity and actually showing up in that authenticity, not for your self-gain, but for the betterment of the whole.
Yeah, it's so true. That is when you feel a sense of purpose, when you're serving the world. It's even going back to love and dating and relationships. There's this theory that I paraded around years ago that man's life purpose is to make women happy.
Nice.
And I added to that because people definitely wanted, like, they needed like an addition for women in there. And so it's like, and women's are to wholeheartedly love men.
Nice.
And there's a lot of pushback around that, and a lot of men being like, well, we don't even know how to make them happy. And when you dive deep into that, because they said like women, if women told us how to make them happy, we would do it, but they don't even know what makes them happy. And I think it's really simple underneath that. What makes everybody happy is when love is being served into the world. So if man is serving love into the world, she's happy and she's loving him. And there's this whole circusry of love that's happening.
Oh my God, Christine, that's hilarious. That's actually one of the ways that I ended up with my partner. And it's been a wonderful thing that I've been like sharing with any of my girlfriends that I have, especially the girlfriends I have in my life that are like smart, intelligent, beautiful, powerful women, right? It's been amazing to share this with them. So maybe whoever's listening to this, you can do this, because like literally what you're saying, it's like on point, is if any man, and I'm saying this from a man's perspective, right? If any man wants your attention, your love, your whatever, right? They want you, right? Maybe here's an experiment to try. When they want your attention, they want your love, they want your whatever it is, your time, ask them, like actually create a discerning practice of being like, what are you doing to make the world better? Number one, what are you doing to make the world better? Tell me and show me, and actually take me with you. Like, let me experience you in doing that work so that I can actually, from a discernment point of view, see, are you doing it performatively or are you actually because here's the thing. And I've done this with so many of my girlfriends, and the feedback I get from them is that it helps them actually weed out any of the guys that are not doing that. And by the way, like even me, right? That's the situation. It worked with me too, but like, it's one of those things where it's double fold, right? For men, we need that challenge, but we don't get challenged, right? We're like, we think if we have money and we have things, fancy things, that's going to get the girl, right? So that all the men are working towards that. None of the women are being like, hey, what are you actually doing? Like, show me what you're doing, right? So we're not being challenged in that way of how you're making the world better, how you bringing love into the world and kindness and compassion, right? The other side of it is, as women, you start to create a filtering factor, right? You like start to upgrade the men in your life, because even if you don't want to date that man, but you go and do it with them, now you have a man who's a friend who actually cares in the world. So how do you think that man's going to treat you? Like you said, if that man is taking care of animals or plants or whatever, elderly or homeless people, how do you think that man's going to treat you? Also, on the other side of it, how is that man going to treat you if they're not doing shit for anyone?
It's so true. And from a personal context, it's just in the way you're speaking, like a man I'm dating, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so in love with him because that's what I get to see. And I play this, the being okay in the unknowing. So it's such a dance, like unknowing, like I want to capture and label him at times to like, this is what it is. And also just being in awe of him being out there and serving love into the world. And when I say that, man's life purpose is to make women happy, it's not one woman. Yes, you can dedicate attention and time to create and build something with one woman, but that's not the only woman that will make your life fulfilled by making one human happy.
Don't forget the grandmas. Don't forget the mamas. Don't forget the nieces and the daughters. I even had
my gay uncle, when I was parading this theory around, he was like, all like annoyed with me. And I was like, well, Uncle David, I see the way that you treat my grandma, your mom. Like, you do everything to make sure that she is happy and okay. And he can't really rebuttal. Like, it's even just those moments of like opening the door for a woman. Like, it's just the small things, helping a grandma cross the street, whatever it may be, those things that are providing this level of like service of love into the world. Like, right. And being in a relationship, a woman might think that she wants more attention and more time from you. And that's what I play that game with. Like, I want more, because you're making me feel so good. But it's like this also practice of universal love includes self-sacrifice and sharing, like sharing of resources, sharing of, especially when there is I'm going to throw this out there, but I meet with so many women who are, I don't even know how I'm going to take this thought, but I'm just going to put it out there. I meet so many women who are they're fucking amazing in their 50s and 60s. And they come to me and we have discovery calls around matchmaking. And it's partly why the Epic Love Club is being put together. But they, they want a man who's to to explore the world with, to grow with, who is of appropriate age. And I what I'm grateful for is looking at this younger generation. I think they're going to solve the problem, because there's just potentially like there's you got to find them, because there's not just a one place where these growth-minded men, because they've had to, again, once they're getting to their 50s. I remember when I was younger in like studying Kabbalah, they would be like, oh, the people over 40, they're fucked. Just focus on the children. So there's almost needing to be a sharing. Oh my God, am I really saying this? Like a sharing, more of an open sharing of, man, you don't have to necessarily share sex with your man with somebody else. You can. But like, how do we even share connection more openly, so more people who are like evolving can actually feel the connectedness in the evolution?
And on that note too, I'm sure you know people, but I know men in their 50s and 60s that, you know, are even successful, right? That are unable to access this filial love, this like really like deep brotherly love, right? And this like love to humanity and to the universe, and how to do that, like how to actually practice that. Because even as you're sharing these older women, I'm like, they probably haven't seen that in their lifetime, because so many of like our modern men in our culture, the Western, especially the Western culture, right? If you've grown up in this Western culture, it's materialism, right? Like they've built their success on materialism, right? And so that materialism disconnects you from the stuff that's not material, right? The ooey gooey stuff. You don't even know how to do it, right? And then you have heart disease, and you have this other situation. So many people, so many men, right, have so many of these problems, but they're pretty healthy. Like they run, they do exercise. How are they ending up with heart disease? Because they're not actually being able to open their hearts up in the world. They're not being completely honest with themselves and the world in a variety of ways. So these women are struggling finding these men that are their age, because these men have been indoctrinated in a system that literally, I think Charlie Chaplin said it in his speech, right? They're machine men, right? They don't have hearts. They're machine men with machine hearts. That's what he said in his Great Dictator speech, right? So what's happening too is like, as you're sharing this, maybe these epic love clubs can also be, we could do one in Hawaii. We talk about that, right? We could do one in Hawaii, is actually coming out to a place like Hawaii, for example, right here on the big island of Hawaii, and actually together, let's go and help some of the communities. Let's go and help some of the elderly communities, the farming communities, the children, the animals, right? The cows and the goats. Let's go and do different activities of service. And who knows what'll click. But at least that will also it'll open up the heart of the men, but it'll also help the women see that in the men, and see the hope that men can actually open their heart in that way, with compassion and service, you know, because that feeling is missing, the feeling.
Yeah. And I want to also acknowledge women participated in this predicament as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because women like to control, and we like to know. And we want to make sure that everything is all buttoned up, and that you just have eyes for me, and that you're never going to cheat, and you're not going to stray, and everything's going to be good. So men, they suppress pieces of themselves, and they're not as interesting or dynamic when they're suppressing. But when you invite them to bring the full experience of themselves, that's what I think if I could give one piece of advice in this moment of time to people who are in relationship or are dating, constantly be inviting the other person to bring more of yourself, bring more of me, bring more of your inner thoughts, bring more. I'm not going to judge any of them. Bring it, bring it, bring it, bring it. And that's where you get the full dynamic and the depth of a connection that you're craving. But people are scared to do that because they've been judged. They've been told it's wrong. And
there's also a neuroplasticity there too, right? You atrophy in your ability. If you don't practice your neurons and your nervous system, you actually don't know how to even access that anymore. Like it becomes atrophied.
Yeah. Yes. I often, like, sometimes in my one-on-one sessions, I said this recently in another podcast, but like women will come and they're feeling as though they're not in their feminine, that they're more in their masculine. And you're going to appreciate this, because what I ask, it's like, when's the last time you played?
Nice.
And they'll usually look at me with like a blank stare. I'm like, go play, you'll be fine. You'll find your femininity. Like, and maybe it'll be asked, just play, because that's all that energetic is. It's play, and being in ecstatic bliss and opening up. And when we are in a state of crisis and chaos, partly because we don't have play, and we're not playing because we're in crisis and chaos. And
you got to go back to our academic system, right? Like everybody is institutionalized to not play, right? And then you have to be very wealthy to be able to have leisure, right? You have to be we all got to hustle, right? 40 hours, 50 hours, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, blah, blah, blah. What time do you have to play then, right? And when you're doing your job, how many people have jobs where you can play in the job, right? Not that's also difficult and trying. And mind you, like, I know this, I'm very familiar because I bring play into organizations, communities. People are like weirded out what I do, right? Because like, what, like play, that's not, you're not doing serious stuff if you're playing. And so we have a culture that like takes away the connection between play and actually being effective, right? Mind you, how effective is everybody right now? Like most people are not even using their time resourcefully because they desperately need to play so they can show up even more effectively, but they're not playing. So they're not even effective. They might be working 10 hours in a day. You probably know people like this. They might clock you for 10 hours, but all that work could have been done in 2 hours if they were having fun.
Tell me about how you bring play into workspaces and festivals and events.
I mean, for me, it's more important to not preach to the choir, because like when people are drinking the Kool-Aid, I'm not interested in like, here's more Kool-Aid, guys. So for me, it's important to go into organizations and communities that have been stripped from the idea of neuroplasticity. So that's how I present play is more from the context of neuroplasticity and helping communities and organizations and people in these organizations understand the idea of neuroplasticity. Because if you understand it, it's very different than like, listen to me talk for 1 hour or 2 hours, or like, here's like a workbook and read about all the science and data and all this stuff. Like, wait, no, but if you understand it, you can embody neuroplasticity, the idea of neuroplasticity, then you can make it your own. And that's kind of what I do. I've done stuff with Fox, Disney, ABC, Rand Corporation, one of the biggest scientist organizations in the world. And so I did that with scientists. Like I've done it with the San Francisco Police Department, with police officers. I've done it with veterans. I've done it in the prisons. I've done it in refugee camps. I've done it like, you name it, 72 and Sunny. I've done it like with like Fortune 5, like Marriott Hotel. And oh my gosh, I can go on. I've done it with doctors and nurses.
And when you say you've done it, what are you doing?
I don't know, because every single experience is completely unique because it's experiential. Like I actually adapt it based on the audience that's there. So if I'm doing it with a bunch of children, I'm going to adapt it to the children. If I'm doing it with a bunch of scientists, I'm going to adapt it their way. I'm going to use more science. I'm going to contextualize it with more scientific research and data and if they need to hear that. But at the same time, when I present neuroplasticity, I'm actually also imbuing ideas around Kundalini, ideas and practices around yoga and Ayurveda, and also psychoneuroimmunology, right? Because there's a lot of like understanding that actually like our state of our consciousness and how we think affects our immune system, right? And our nervous system. And so I present all these ideas, but more through play and interaction and communication exercises with people. And so that way people are like, we're doing like multiple dynamic things at the same time. And that's why I say it's different every time, because I also invite people in the organizations or the communities to also offer ideas themselves. So it's not just me talking for 1 hour, but it's like, hey, all right, what is the wisdom that you guys have in here? And sometimes it's crazy because some people step up after we start like laughing and playing a little bit. Some of the quietest people, I like kind of get them to come out of their shell and they all of a sudden share some awesome like engagement that we do. And then the whole community is like, wow, we didn't even know that person had that. One time I was doing it with the Hilton Foundation, which is, Hilton's huge, right? And I was doing it with the staff and the management of Hilton, and the vice president, who's like this serious, like, he's like a serious older man that we were talking about, like the 50s, 60s, serious older man. We did a neuroplasticity exercise where we kind of mixed in laughter and play and everything. And at the end of it, when we were doing a little bit of sharing, he broke down and cried. and he talked about like some issues he was having, and like he like literally cried to everybody, and everybody later on was telling me like they've never seen him as like that before. So also what I do is try to like break those boundaries down, dissolve those boundaries of like where we're just controlling our emotions, right? We're like blocking our emotions. And with the neuroplasticity exercises that I offer, it's kind of like, hopefully the intention is that people break those barriers down and are able to communicate their authenticity, their emotions better with each other.
And when you're bringing the like Kundalini principles and shifting neuroplasticity, like what are some of the things that, like what are some of these principles that you're sharing about?
I mean, when we say Kundalini, right? I mean, you gotta be careful too, because I just watched a whole video today on Vice about Yogi Bhajan. And I'm like, I'm not a big fan of like anybody who appropriates our wisdom, including Indian people. Like Indian people take advantage of all the white people wanting to learn something, right? It seems like a pattern that it keeps happening over and over again. So I'm not talking about that Kundalini. I'm talking about more of the OG Kundalini, right? Like the one that comes from India, that is actually, you can only learn about it from people who are willing to teach you about it, right? Because they feel that you're going to be humble in its practice and its sharing. So when I talk about those principles and practices, it's about understanding your nervous system, how to upregulate or downregulate your nervous system, and also how to, because I don't, if I'm doing it in a festival, I will bring up esoteric things. But when I'm doing it in professional spaces, I leave out the esoteric spaces and I let people experience the esoteric instead, right? So there's esoteric principles in Kundalini, right? That like, when we're talking about like chakras, right? We're talking about tantra, right? We're talking about like mantra and yantras, right? Like there are these principles that we could talk about it for a long time, but like if you experience it, you can't put words to it. You're like, oh, it's like a new tool that you have in your toolkit. So for me, it's about supporting people to embody and experience that embodiment of these principles, right? And like I said, going back to it, nervous system, right? Understanding your emotional landscape, right? Like understanding your own emotional landscape and how to shift between colors of your emotions, right? What if our emotions are like colors? And how do we move through those colors and not get attached? Oh my God, we come back to attachment. How do we not get attached to our emotions, but understand we have the whole spectrum of emotions within us, so that we can move through them with love and integrity for how we need to experience it.
Mm.
That's where you get to Tantra, right? Because we need to like understand. By the way, for all those folks out there, Tantra, say it with me, Christina. Tantra?
Tantra?
Tantra, not Tantra. Tantra.
Tantra?
Tantra, very good. It feels it. You feel the Tantra in your mouth when you say it. Tantra.
Tantra.
Tantra. Mantra.
Mantra.
Yantra.
Yantra.
There you go, right? So you got through those Trinity, Yantra, Mantra, Tantra.
Yantra, Tantra. Say it again.
Tantra.
Tantra.
Mantra.
Mantra.
Yantra.
Yantra.
Yep. Right?
And can you also, being Sikh, can you share a little bit about that experience? And being of Sikh culture, you're the first person to share with me about that. And I found it very fascinating and beautiful. And the stories of, in India of them, being like cast aside at times as well.
Well, I mean, I guess first and foremost, we should acknowledge, my ancestors and all the ancestors' friends and colleagues. We wouldn't have yoga today if it wasn't for the Sikh people. Just like people need to understand this. Like if you practice yoga, you wouldn't have it right now. You wouldn't even have access to it. You don't even know what it was if the Sikh people didn't.
Can I challenge you on that for a moment?
Sure.
I feel like there's like a yes and. I think that humans, there's things happening up in the ethers and a collectiveness that's happening in ethers that it gets distilled down and people pick it up. So at some point, people would have learned that stretching and being in a state of meditation when you're stretching is healthy for the system. And so something would have been created that was called something else that would have given a similar feeling or vibe with inside of that.
Yes. And we need to start acknowledging history if we don't want it to repeat, and if we don't acknowledge history, we are destined to repeat the patterns, right? And we have to acknowledge that these patterns exist because there's always been colonization ever since humanity has decided that we own this part of land here, and this is our land and we're not sharing it. Indigenous cultures don't really have that as much, but a lot of modern culture, and this includes, it's not just white people, right? This is the Chinese have done this. There's the Mughal Empire that were brown people, right? So we have to acknowledge this. There's been a pattern of people just taking over land. And when they take over their land, one of the systematic things people do is destroy the culture that used to be on that land. And we need to understand that. That's happening right now too. Okay. I don't know if you have people on this thread who get censored. We're experiencing that in real time now, when our ideas we're not able to even share our ideas, right? So a dominant culture comes in and goes, all your ideas are not valuable. Boom, we're going to call it. So yes, you're right that there would always be some form of yoga somewhere. But like I said earlier, some things have been practiced for so long, have been shared and developed and cultivated. There might be something like something important. Like we do that with alcohol, with yogurt. There's culinary things. We love certain culinary things because they've been cultivated over hundreds of years, right? So same thing with knowledge and wisdom. If it's cultivated for a long time, maybe it's more sweeter, maybe it's more valuable for us. That being said, I bring up this thing because the Mughal Empire, right? A lot of people don't know this in the West because we don't learn this in our history classes, unfortunately, or social science classes. But the Mughal Empire, basically the Taj Mahal, right, is a symbol of the Mughal Empire. It took over all of India. One of the things that they did in India is they systematically, the Taj Mahal is built on top of a Hindu temple. They destroyed the Hindu temple and built the Taj Mahal on top. It was an epic Hindu temple. It was massive, huge vortex of energy, right? It was actually a female temple, right? For a feminine god. Okay. So we have to understand all over India, the Mughal Empire destroyed Buddhist temples, Hindu temples, all over the place, right? Sikhism didn't even exist at that point. But what happened is the Sikh community started forming, and the Sikh community formed around sovereignty. It wasn't even a religion at first. It was hey, whatever you believe in, you could come and join this community, but we're going to make our own food. We're going to have our own water. We're going to have our own system of taking care of each other where we don't even need money. We're not even going to use money. We're going to just take care of everybody. Whoever has needs, we're going to take care of them. Right. And you could be Hindu, you could be Muslim, you could be atheist, there were Jews that joined there, right? Because they were getting persecuted by the Islamic Empire. The Mughal Empire was Islamic, right? So they started forming these communities, right? These farming communities that were based around sovereignty. Wait, that sounds like it would be beneficial today. Well, anyways, okay. So they formed these sovereign communities that didn't need government. And they didn't pay their taxes to the government. And the Mughal Empire started being whoa, hold up 1 second. This ain't good. You guys aren't paying our taxes. You guys are not Muslim. You guys are continuing these traditions of yoga and Buddhist philosophies. You guys are, no. You guys need to be Islamic, right? And so they started killing people. They actually started killing some of the leaders in these communities, these Sikh communities. And that's when Sikhism went from being a community, more of a bhakti kind of philosophy, where it was more love, universal love and taking care of everybody and having compassion. It actually started becoming a little bit militaristic. And so some of the people started deciding we need to have warriors that are protecting this land, that are the guardians for anybody trying to mess with the children and the women and anybody trying to practice any religion, freedom of whatever, right? And so they started training in martial arts. And so the Sikh faith, that's why there's swords on here, it actually formed as kind of like a Jedi force to be hey, somebody's got to protect the freedom of religion. Somebody's got to protect the freedom of art. Somebody's got to protect the freedom of whatever, freedom of food, right? We have to protect that, right? Somebody has to do that. And so the Sikh community formed that way. That was actually how it was formed. So when I say there would be no yoga and the way we think about yoga today and feel yoga today, well, the Sikh community was the one protecting all the yogis, like, right? Otherwise they would have been forced, and a lot of them were forced into Islam. That's why half of India is Islamic, is Muslim. Like, you got to think about that. Half of India is Muslim. That's crazy, right? We think it's Hindu and stuff, right? Actually, so that was a conversion, a forced conversion of millions of people over like 400 years, right? And a dissolution. So the Sikh community were like these pockets throughout northern India. And even if you like talk to like southern Indians, they like, if you like when I travel around India, Christina, with my turban, it's crazy how many people come up to me and thank me for my ancestors. Like literally, like Hindus and Buddhists are like, thank you, you know, like they bring us into their homes. Like, I'm like, I didn't do anything, you know, but like we get like, there is still there's an acknowledgement, like, holy shit. But on the other side of it, there's colonial people in India that are scared of that sovereignty, right? So there's now there's like starting to become like a growing kind of like a fear of the Sikh community, because it's like, oh shit, we can't control them. But that's what happened with the farmers' protests.
How do you, you know, there's this, how do you integrate in your philosophies or your thinking in the create, destroy? Because there's a process in life, like life, death, light, dark, create, destroy. That's like the circuitry of life. Sure. And there's new people that come to this world who are more evolved, let's hope, than previous ones. How in your thinking of, because, you know, when we went into this podcast, we would discuss, you know, cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation. How do you integrate that with the create, destroyed, and also the culture that's so fucking offended by so many things as well at the same time, that there's a little bit sometimes when the topic of appropriation comes up, I'm like, can we just keep going forward? Like I you know, moving from a place of love in all ways, but not getting like held back and the tension high because of this is the way things should be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that question up. I mean, that's been something I've been trying to explore in reality, right? Not just like from an intellectual or think tanking perspective, but more like heart tanking, and actually bringing it into communities. Actually, last year, I saw a post from Bhakti Love Reunion that they were like having their festival, and I messaged them like in a private DM. I was like, hey, like, can we have a panel discussion about appropriation versus appreciation? And I was really grateful for Heather Sanders, who is the founder of Sedona Yoga Festival, for sponsoring that panel. Actually, like, she actually supported that to happen, and it was awesome. Like, she sponsored it, and I'm like really commend her for taking initiative, because so many people have made money from yoga and from these practices. And they like, what a wonderful thing to see somebody and to honor them, that they like actually are like, hey, we need to pay it forward. Like, let's have this conversation. And so when we had this conversation at Bhakti Love Reunion last year, I remember going into it and being like, wait, that same thing you said, Christina, that like, so many of these conversations around appropriation, they bring us back into the pain and suffering and shame, whether you're on the side of appropriating, or like whether you've been using all this knowledge and wisdom and then you feel shamed, right? Or you're like on the other side and you come from South Asian cultures and you're like, what the F, bro? Like, why are you guys using, you know, like, where's the respect? So like, both sides are not healthy. Everybody, you know, there's like, it's not a good feeling and it's not getting us anywhere, right? So I went to that festival and I'm like, all right, I need to do something different. Like, let me bring the neuroplasticity into it. So we actually started with laughter, and we started with some chanting, and we started with some like just connecting everybody. And we made it a circle. Like, I was like, I'm not going to do like a panel with people talking to the top, like F that, right? We made it a circle discussion. So we got in a circle and everybody shared. And even though there were a few South Asians sharing from a place of like, whatever, seniority, right? Or like a vantage point of like authenticity, right? We made a point to also engage the community and be like, what are your guys' questions for how to appreciate better? right? So we had a discussion of how to appreciate better and not just, oh, hey, everything is being appropriated, right? And so it became a wonderful discussion, a constructive conversation. And then I got invited to do it at Sedona Yoga Festival. And then now we're doing another one at Bhakti Festival that's around Bhakti for social evolution. So talking about using Bhakti in the right context for what's going on in the world right now. Like there's clearly a lot of issues in our world right now, in our communities. How do we use these spiritual ideas to actually show up better in our community? So I'm starting to take charge, Christina, with that, is bringing these neuroplasticity practices, taking it out of the corporate wellness stuff I'm doing and bring it into these conversations and making sure these conversations are not pedantic. Like it's not a bunch of people just talking at people. Like that's how is that working out? How long has South by Southwest been doing that? How long have all of these think tanks been like having people talk at people? You know, like where is the constructive conversation and then the call to action? Like, all right, now we talked, let's do something. Here's what we're going to do together, you know?
Yeah. And here's how we're going to make it fun. And it's going to be like play. We're going to enjoy it. I mean, there's truth to, a tragedy plus time equals comedy. And you can replace time with space. So if you space out and you look down on humans, you're like, look at these things. They're like shooting each other and like so crazy. Like, oh my God, like they're insane. But yeah, like that's which bringing into, I love how you inject the play and fun into all that you're doing. So you're at Bhakti Love Fest and Bhakti Love Reunion Fest.
But at Bhakti Fest and at Bhakti Love Reunion, actually, and we need to actually talk to Bhakti Love Reunion about this. So I'll be hosting more panels about this subject. So I encourage people who have been practicing yoga and Kundalini and chanting the songs or listening to the songs on their like Spotify channels and they listen to chants, come to these conversations because maybe you can have a more deeper understanding and a reflection of how to actually maximize the benefit of doing this stuff, right? Because maybe we can share that benefit. Like, we talk about karma yoga today. How many people know that karma yoga can be proactive, right? So we got to start having these conversations with the people who come from the lineages of these practices, right? And who are not trying to make a buck. Like, I'm not trying to make money from you having this conversation with me. Like, I actually want us to have this conversation. And my feeling is that things will work out better when we have these conversations. I don't know how, but our collective intelligence is that way. Like when we start to understand things collectively, we then lean in together to support each other collectively, right? Mm-hmm. Right now, we're all just so individualized. Everybody's just dog eat dog. And how is that working out for everyone, you know?
Totally. Yeah. And we have Bhakti Love Festival, October 13th through the 15th of 2023 is on the WeDeepen calendar. You could get tickets now to the festival. It's in Weldon, California. So I know you'll be there. We did and
by the way, too, let people know that we're one of the things that we're going to be doing there too is doing a regenerative project on that land to plant native plant species, plant vegetables and fruit trees, and regenerate the land because there's a stream going through and there's a lot of weeds. So we're actually going to make it fun. We're going to make that regenerative experience fun, and we're going to make it so that future generations can actually be supported by the energy of the festival. So we're going to channel the energy of the festival to actually bring bhakti into the soil, bring bhakti into the community. But also, if you want to learn how to compost, if you want to learn how to plant, if you want to learn how to take care of land, we're going to be creating that space, that experience as well. That's been one of my dreams, is like hacking these festival spaces because there's so many people, and sometimes people are like getting high from the festival activity or from other things, but why don't we help the soil while we're in that high space? Like, what if we're actually, what if we're singing songs while we're taking care of the soil? What if we're like listening to awesome DJ play music while we're taking care of the soil? Like, so we're trying to explore that as well. So if you guys come to that festival, Bhakti Love Reunion, you'll also get to experience taking care of the land and being proactive about climate, right? Actually doing something that's going to regenerate the land and regenerate the people.
Now, what's going to my mind is asking you a question around what are the benefits of somebody coming and participating in something like that and learning that? And then I was reminded of my brain reminded me of there's a story in Kabbalah about a guy who's fishing, and he's, catching these big fish every day. And some businessman comes along and he's like, oh my gosh, you're so good at catching these fish. Let's turn this into a business and make it into a factory. And like, we can make millions of dollars as, and giving fish and supplying with the whole world. And the guy's like, well, why would I want to do that? And he's like, well, because you could have a bigger house. And why would I want to do that? He's like, you could do all things. He's like, well, I'm doing this all. And it all came back to circling back to, so he can be back doing what he's doing, fishing right there in the ocean, because he was enjoying his life as is. Like, we cried all this mess. And I think of, it just reminds me of like, yeah, if you learn to farm and grow your own food, you actually don't have to be in the hustle and the bustle of working for other people and creating all these commerce and selling, we don't need more people to sell candles. We don't need more people to make T-shirts. Like, we have enough clothes for a society. We don't need any more baby clothes. There's plenty of baby clothes to go around. Like, you don't have to waste your time doing that. If you learn to harvest land and learn to get the resources that support you in thriving, you would have so much more time in your life to just enjoy it, instead of being, again, in this like neurotic cycle of more, so I can eventually get a vacation to go play.
Well, and I gotta say, like, we're talking through Zoom and technology, and I have internet, and I'm on the farm, but I'm still engaged in technology. I'm still engaged in the worldly activities. I'm still doing technological fancy stuff. I'm living comfortably and fancy, but I'm on the farm. So, everybody has this conception that, if you're on the farm, you have to like separate from all the fun, cool, luxury things, and you can have both. Like, why can't we have luxury experiences while we're doing what's natural? Like, why can't we do both? By the way, when you shower with water from like the soil and the land, that feels way different than showering in a city. Say that. But I would also say too, this, like, in the context of what you're saying, there's also an aspect of group synchronization. Like when we are taking care of the land together, for example, right? And singing a song together while we're taking care of the land, right? There's actually something we're tuning into in our ancestral DNA, right? So we might actually be able to we might be healing trauma from our ancestors and from our own life, right? By doing work with the soil, with each other. And then your gut microbiome, because there's like microbiome coming out of the soil that's going into your nose, through your fingers. And then you're actually like making your gut system healthier, which is increasing serotonin, which is making you feel better, right? That's all the science over there. But at the other side of it, there's something spiritual that when we show up in this way in community with loving nature and showing up for Mother Earth and showing up in a way that makes us feel like we're doing something like, oh yeah, the world is burning, but here we are planting seeds so that the world can be abundant. So like, we're also doing something spiritual too, that helps us sleep better at night. That helps us believe and have hope with each other and with ourselves and with each other.
Mm. So true. Thank you for all that you do out into the world. Before we wrap up, is there anything that is coming through to you that you're like, I want people listening to know this?
Political hope.
Tell them about political hope.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, political hope would even exist if it wasn't for Christina. So I have to really, acknowledge Christina and the WeDeepen community for, just being supportive. And that journey has been awesome because it started off like, what the heck am I doing? Can I do this? Right. And now it's become like therapy. Like I get really excited. Like when I'm like reading articles or listening to YouTube essays or going down different rabbit holes, I'll come across people who are doing incredible work, but you can't find them. They're not on the news. Like they're not like on social media, but there's incredible people out there doing beautiful work, including Christina, who I've interviewed on the show. And I liken political hope, not so much in just politics, but just anybody who's building hope in the sense of like, of love, in the sense of community, in the sense of responsibility, right? For community and relationships, right? You bring up relationships like that. For me, political hope is like people who are doing that work. And also what I've also started doing, which you will love, is I've been interviewing people who are like doing petitions. And we talk about the petition, like we go and review the petition in a fun way, right? So that it can be a helpful point of information for people who are not sure if they should support a petition or if they didn't even know there was a petition about something. I've been interviewing people who do reports. I just interviewed a woman who did a report called Better Imagining for Future Democracy, right? And so it was really cool. She did a whole 73-page paper. And so we went over that whole paper and talked about imagination being used in government and how we need to be more imaginative. So I try to highlight people who, like, I feel if we leaned into these ideas and we started talking about these ideas that are proactive and that are preventative, that we don't then have to be reactive to terrible circumstances like we just dealt with the past couple of years, right? Mind you, Christina, you knew me before this pandemic, or no, you didn't know me before this pandemic. Before this pandemic, for about 2 years, I was like screaming, hey guys, something's coming, get involved. Be involved, be involved. I didn't know what was going to happen, but you could actually see if you're involved in the political spaces and you're questioning things, right? If you're questioning things, you can actually see the patterns and what's building, right? So if we want to prevent the next shutdown, we got to start getting active and proactive, right? So that we know what our rights are and we know how to show up in the right way with each other in solidarity, right? And so that's my invitation is Political Hope is that opportunity to learn how you can be. And it's also therapy for me because I get all stressed out about what's going on. So I hope when you listen to it, anybody listens to it, they also get a little bit of therapy that like there is hope, there is possibility. Like, look, there's people doing things. Maybe what they're doing, I could do it in my community, right? And that's the intention behind it.
I love how much of a nerd you are. If you were going to suggest that somebody go and listen to one podcast episode, like start at this episode, what's your favorite besides the episode we did together, of course, but what's your favorite episode?
Oh, dang it. You took that off the table. There's two that I can't choose. It's hard for me to choose from, right? Like one, I feel like now I'm going to say three. Okay. There's the Charles Eisenstein interview, which is awesome. And he, by the way, I talked to him recently. He's going to come on again in about a month. We were talking about him coming back on and having and that's kind of something I've been talking with a lot of my guests is having them come back, every once in a while. I've had one council member come on twice now. So Charles Eisenstein interview was one. The other one is Roger Berkowitz, right? Which was about citizen assemblies. And that was really good because he's the founder of the Hannah Arendt Center. So I don't know if anybody out there knows Hannah Arendt, but she was her dad was in Russia and her father was her dad was in Russia. Her mom survived the Holocaust. And so she made it her life's journey to research and understand how do we prevent these kind of genocides that the government facilitates, like that is actually that people follow directions and follow the rules to harm people. So she her whole life was based on that. So he founded the Hannah Arendt Center in New York, which researches how to prevent genocides, right? And how to just prevent human rights violations in general. So that was really good because citizen assemblies, that conversation he has is really smart because it helps to contextualize how we can make a difference in our communities in a real way. And how do we know our constitutional rights? How do we use our constitutional rights to get there, to create safe and abundant places for ourselves, right? So that's really cool. And he's really well-spoken. So it was a really great conversation. We even talked about the etymology of the word politics. By the way, Christina, I didn't know this, but the word politics, Roger kind of downloaded this on me, that the word politics comes from, you should listen to the podcast to know what the word politics is. But okay, I'll connect it to something. It has to do with cannabis. So the politics, the etymology of it comes from smoking cannabis. All right. So interesting politics, right? So you got to listen to the podcast to find out the actual etymology of it. Okay. And I'll just tell you what the heck. So politics is actually that, when you smoke from a pipe and how sometimes from the pipe, a ring comes out.
Yeah.
Right? That's a polis. So that's actually the etymology of politics is that polis that like it starts spreading, like it starts in a circle and it goes, that's polis, which is where politics comes from.
Where the word politics comes from?
Where the word politics comes from
Someone was getting stoned and high.
It comes from that smoke circle that spreads.
But that could be from any type of plant being smoked.
What do you think they smoked back in the days? Come on.
Tobacco?
Peace pipe. It actually comes from the politics. The polis was actually used in terms of the peace pipe. So when you would smoke with other people with the intention, you smoke with other people to talk about something. Like you bring people together in a circle, and then you create a circle from the smoke, which you're creating a circle of conversation to do something together.
Fascinating. And the last episode?
Last episode is there's a recent one I just did with Forrest Landry, who is, really good friends with like the Social Dilemma guy and Daniel Schwarzenegger. I can't say Schwarzenegger, and like all these different people. He's been collaborating with Charles Eisenstein. He's been collaborating with all these different people, studying communities and what corrupts communities. Like, why do communities get corrupted? So he and I had a really amazing starting conversation. I think it's just going to be the beginning, because we're going to have a series, because there's so much to unpack there. But we talk about communities and how to do community governance in an ethical and sustainable way. So that one's really valuable. If you're a part of a community, you want to start a community, whatever it is, how do we mitigate corruption in communities and abuse, right? Like, this, Christina, there's so much abuse that happens in communities, in semi-cults, and like whatever it is, right? You can see these patterns of abuse.
Yeah. Fascinating. Well, I'll definitely in the show notes, I'll link these 3 episodes there as well. So take a listen. If you're listening to this, and you enjoy Indy, you're going to enjoy those. And specifically around, if you want to make waves politically, Political Hope is the go-to podcast, highly suggested. And again, you're going to find yourself immersed in conversation that isn't happening anywhere else, and somebody who is actually on the ground in the political realm.
I'm not just on the ground. I'm in the ground. I'm like digging in there.
You're digging in there. You are digging in there.
I'm taking out the potatoes and the cassavas, and I'm like pulling that out. Okay.
Thank you, Indy. I love collaborating with you, and I'm so excited for what's more to come, for sure.
And Hawaii, right? What should we do?
Hawaii, retreat in Hawaii. Yes.
If people want to come and do this, we're going to do something. We're going to go to the waterfalls. We're going to go to the nude beach, the clothed beach. We're going to do all kinds of fun stuff, but we're also going to be in service to the land and the people and do some amazing stuff too. That'll be so fun out here.
I'm totally fine if we lure them in through sex. They were all born from it. So that's fine.
So nude beaches. We'll go to we'll take over the nude beach.
Okay, thank you all for tuning into another episode of Deepen with Christina. Again, if you do enjoy this podcast, rate it, give it 5 stars. Also, when you subscribe, you'll get alerted when future episodes come out. So it's in benefit of you to rate and like and subscribe. And go check out that calendar, WeDeepen.com. We will definitely alert you when we plan this Hawaiian retreat at the nudist beaches and have a blast farming and gathering and being in community and singing songs.
Eating fresh papayas.
Singing the songs to help us let go and expand beyond what we thought.
We can go to the volcano. We can go to the volcano and pay our respects. We
can go to the volcano. Okay. Bye, everyone. Until next time. I love you.